4 million landmines. That is how many the Germans buried along the coast of northern France in the spring of 1944. 4 million. But that is just a number. Here is what it actually means. Somebody had to dig 4 million holes, by hand, on their knees, in sand and clay and chalk, in the rain, one hole at a time. A strong man working every day without a single day off could bury maybe 100 of them. That is 40,000 days of work. That is more than 100 years. So they did not use one man. They used a whole coastline of men. Farmers and clerks and plumbers in wool uniforms, digging from Norway down to Spain. And not one of them had been told where the invasion was coming. Only that it was coming. So what does that do to a person? What happens inside a man who spends 3 months fortifying a beach against an enemy who has not arrived, might arrive tomorrow, and might never arrive at all? That is what tonight is about. One officer, one cliff, and a stretch of water that stayed empty for 84 days. Before we go anywhere, though, if you are new here, that subscribe button is right down there, and it costs you nothing at all. And do tell me in the comments where you are listening from tonight, your city and your local time. I record these in the dark in America, and it still gets me that somebody out there is hearing this over breakfast in Manchester, or on a late bus in Melbourne. I like knowing who is up with me. Now hold on. Get comfortable first. I mean it. Fix your pillows. Pull that blanket up over your shoulder. Put the phone somewhere you do not have to hold it. This one settles in slow, and it is better that way. Ready? It is the 14th of March, 1944, and you are asleep in a French farmhouse that smells like apples. Not fresh ones, old ones, from the barrels in the cellar underneath you, the kind of smell that gets into the plaster and never leaves. It is the first thing you notice every morning now, before the cold, before the light, apples and damp stone. Someone is knocking on the doorframe. There is no door. Your name is Werner Pluskat. You are 32 years old. You are a major in the German army. You have 4 batteries of howitzers and a piece of the Normandy coast. And somebody is telling you there is coffee, which is a generous word for what is in that pot. You get up. You are wearing most of your clothes already. That is a habit you picked up somewhere east of here and never lost. Outside, the sky is the colour of a nickel. You walk up the track toward the cliff with your coat open, because the wind has not decided yet whether it is still winter. 12 men are trying to dig a hole in the top of France. They are losing. This is chalk, not soil. Chalk does not move aside the way earth moves aside. Chalk argues. A shovel goes in about 2 inches and stops dead, and the man behind it swears, and the cliff stays exactly where it has been for the last several million years. Every hour they take a little more out. Every hour they come out whiter, coated in a fine dust that gets into the collar, into the wristwatch, into the bread. By noon, every man on that hill looks like a baker, which is awkward because one of them is actually named Baker, Emil Baker. 41 years old, a plumber in Hamburg before the war, far too old for this and doing it anyway. He hears the joke about 11 times a day and he has stopped acknowledging it. He eats his bread very slowly, one small piece at a time, making it last much longer than it needs to. You will notice that about him all spring. Now, a word about the division you belong to, because it matters later. The 352nd Infantry Division did not exist 5 months ago. It was put together in the autumn of 1943 out of whatever Germany still had, which was men who had survived Russia and boys who had never had to survive anything, folded in together and handed a number. Your commanding general is named Dietrich Kreis. He has around 7,000 men. He has been told to hold a length of coast that could comfortably swallow 3 times that many. And here is the part that sounds strange until you sit with it. Nobody in this division has been told where the invasion is coming. Not because it is being kept from you, because nobody knows. Not Kreis, not the generals above Kreis. There are men in Paris who will tell you with total confidence that it will come at Calais, and they will still be saying so in July. So you are not defending a place, you are defending a guess. Your own job has 3 parts, and they are simple enough to say out loud. Cut an observation post into that cliff, register your guns on the beach below it, and when something comes out of that water, break it before it reaches the shingle. The beach, always the beach. That is the entire instruction, and you will be reminded of it so many times over the next 3 months that it stops sounding like an order and starts sounding like a rule of nature. You lift your binoculars and look out at the English Channel. There is nothing on it. There is nothing on it the next day either, or the day after that. Grey water, grey sky, and the 2 of them meeting along a line you are going to end up staring at for 84 days. You will come to know that line the way you know a person's face. You will learn to tell, without thinking about it, when a smudge out there is a fishing boat and when it is only weather. You take out your handkerchief and wipe the lenses. They were not dirty. You do it anyway. You are going to keep doing it. The telephone arrives before the roof does. A field telephone in a wooden case, and with it a 19-year-old named Ludwig Reinhardt from Bamberg, who worked in his father's watch shop until somebody decided he would be more useful holding a receiver on a cliff in France. He turns out to be very good at it. He hears things in the line that nobody else hears, faint clicks and little drops in the sound, which is about what you would expect from a boy raised on the inside of clocks. When he is nervous, he taps a rhythm on his thigh with 2 fingers, steady, like he is keeping time for something that has not started yet. The first time it rings, he hands you the receiver and says, "Regiment, sir." Then he stands there in the chalk dust, holding the case in both arms, waiting, in case you need him to keep holding it. There is a lieutenant, too, named Sauer, 24, who was studying law in Leipzig and who writes absolutely everything down in a small notebook. Ammunition counts, weather, the names of the men on watch, what time the bread came. You will look over his shoulder once and see that he has recorded the fact that a gull landed on gun number 3. The dog turns up on a Thursday. Nobody brings him. He simply comes up the track from somewhere behind the lines, thin and enormous, grey around the muzzle, and inspects the position like a man sent from headquarters to evaluate it. He looks at the guns. He looks at the men. Then he walks into the half-finished observation post, finds the chart table, lies down underneath it, and goes to sleep. You did not give him permission. He does not appear to need any. Somebody calls him Harras, and the name sticks by the end of the week. That night, you sleep in the farmhouse with chalk still in your hair. You can feel it on the pillow, gritty, like sand after a day at the shore. Your back hurts in a new place. Your hands have gone stiff, and your feet are wet. They have been wet since about 9 that morning, and they will be wet again tomorrow, because the chalk holds water and the boots do not keep it out, and there is no way to dry anything properly in a house with no door. Unlike yours. Right now, tonight, take 1 second and actually notice your feet. Warm, dry, under a blanket. Nothing in your boots because you are not wearing boots, and you will not put any on until morning, and even then they will be dry. That is not a small thing. It only feels small because you have always had it. Werner had it once too. It is the 9th of April, 1944, and you are counting poles. Angled poles, driven into the sand at low tide and pointed out to sea, with a mine or an old artillery shell wired to the tip. The idea is that a glider or a landing craft comes in on the high water, does not see them, and opens itself up on one. The men call them Rommel's asparagus, because they were the field marshal's idea, and because from the cliff, that is honestly what the beach looks like now. A vegetable garden planted by somebody with a grudge. Rommel wants 50 million mines along this coast. He has about 4 million. His orders arrive a great deal faster than his cement does. That is the thing nobody puts in the newsreels. The Atlantic Wall, when you say it out loud, sounds like a wall, something continuous, something you could walk along. What it actually is, in April of 1944, is a chain of strongpoints with long, open gaps between them. And the gaps are supposed to be filled by concrete that has not shipped, by guns that have not arrived, and by men who are currently in Russia. What you have instead is time and labour. So you spend both. You plant obstacles, steel hedgehogs, which are 3 girders crossed and welded, squat and stupid-looking, and very effective at tearing the bottom out of a boat. Concrete cones, iron gates that look like something off a farm. You lay wire. You bury mines in the bluffs behind the beach, in the little drawers where a man might climb up, and you mark the fields on a map in Sauer's careful handwriting so that your own people do not walk into them, which happens anyway, twice in April. And you work with the tide because you have no choice. The obstacles have to go in at low water. That gives you about 4 hours twice a day on a schedule set by the moon. Some mornings that means starting at 3. The sea decides when you work, not the army. Your hands come apart in the first week, blisters, then the blisters open, then the chalk gets in them. By the second week, your palms have gone hard and shiny, and you cannot feel the difference between the shovel handle and your own skin. Meanwhile, the observation post finally gets its roof. 6 feet of reinforced concrete over your head. A horizontal slit to look through, wide enough for a pair of binoculars and no wider. A steel door. A shelf for the chart. A hook for the telephone. It smells of wet cement for a month, and then it smells of the sea and gun oil and men, and water beads on the inside of the walls, no matter what the weather is doing outside. When it is done, you stand in it for a while and understand 2 things at the same time. This will stop almost anything the enemy can throw at it, and it has exactly 1 door. The men are proud of it. They say it is built to last 1,000 years. Somebody scratches the date into the concrete by the entrance. The first false alarm comes on a night in the middle of the month. The telephone rings at 2:10, and Ludwig has the receiver in your hand before you are properly awake. Aircraft to the northwest, everyone to their positions. You stand in the dark in your coat for 2 hours and 11 minutes, which you know precisely because Sauer wrote it down, and you hear absolutely nothing except the water and your own men breathing. Then the line clicks, and a tired voice says, "All clear," and everybody goes back to bed. That happens again 8 days later, and again after that. By the end of April, you sleep in your boots. You lie on the cot in the farmhouse with your hands throbbing and your coat over you like a second blanket, and you listen to the channel go in and out down at the bottom of the cliff. It is a good sound. It is the same sound it has been making since long before anybody thought to fortify it, and it does not care at all what you have been building. Harras is asleep somewhere in the room. You can hear him turn over. It is the 2nd of May, 1944, and you are reading a tide table. You read it the way other men read the paper. High water, low water, times and heights, printed in small type on a folded sheet that lives in your breast pocket and is coming apart along the creases. Ludwig has copied it out twice by hand, in tiny, neat watchmaker's letters, because you asked him to, and because he had nothing else to do. This is the month where the waiting turns into a trade. It happens quietly. In March, you were building something, and there was a point to every hour. By May, the building is mostly finished, and what remains is watching, and watching does not fill a day. So the day gets filled with other things. You inspect the guns. You inspect them again. You run the crews through a drill and time them and make them do it faster. Then you do it in the dark. Then you do it in the dark with one man pretending to be wounded. You go down to the beach at low tide and check the obstacles for rust and for shells that have worked loose in the sand. You climb back up. That climb takes 11 minutes, and by the middle of May, you can do it without stopping. And you look at the water, every day, nothing on it. The men develop small trades of their own. Baker fixes things. Word gets around that he can make a stove draw properly and repair anything with a valve in it, and men come from the next position over with broken lamps. He will not take cigarettes for it. He takes bread. Then he sits on the ammunition boxes and eats it a piece at a time, very slowly, while Harras sits directly in front of him with an expression of absolute moral certainty. Harras wins about 1 time in 4. It is enough to keep him coming back. Sauer, who writes everything down, starts keeping a second list in the back of his notebook of every night there was an alarm, and nothing came of it. By the last week of May, the list has 14 entries. He shows it to you like it proves something. You are not sure what. Letters come up the track on Tuesdays and Fridays. Somebody's mother has sent a photograph of a garden. Ludwig gets a letter from a 12-year-old sister named Trudy, who has drawn him a picture of the shop with the clocks in the window, all of them showing different times. He pins it inside the entrance to the bunker. It stays there. You write home yourself, in the evenings, at the chart table with the dog against your leg. There is not much you are permitted to say, and not much you want to. So you write about the weather, which is genuinely beautiful that month, and about a farm cat, and about nothing. Now, here is what is happening that none of you can see. Through that same May, the bridges over the Seine are being bombed to pieces. So are the rail yards, the marshalling stations, the road junctions. From where you sit, it looks like the beginning of something, and it is. But when the reports go up the chain, they get read as preparation for a landing at Calais, because Calais is where everybody has already decided the landing will be, and once a headquarters has decided a thing, evidence starts arriving to agree with it. Meanwhile, the traffic is being cut behind you, quietly, methodically. The roads you would need in order to be reinforced, and the roads you would need in order to leave. You do not know any of that. You know your section of water and your 4 batteries and the tide. The last night of May is warm and completely still. No alarm. The telephone does not ring once. You sit outside the bunker with your back against 6 feet of concrete that has finally stopped smelling of cement, and you can see the lights of nothing at all out there, because there is nothing out there, and you have stopped expecting there to be. Harras comes and puts his chin on your boot and leaves it there. You go to bed near midnight. The sheets in the farmhouse are the same sheets that were on that cot in March. They have been slept in every night since by a man who works in chalk and salt water. And they are stiff now, and they smell of him. And there is grit in them that never comes out, no matter how they are shaken. Unlike yours tonight. Reach out and touch them. Clean. Dry. Somebody washed them, or you washed them, and they smell like a cupboard and nothing else. When you turn over, they will not scratch you. Werner slept in his boots that night, on a cot that was gritty, in a house with no door. He slept well, though. That is the strange part. He had no reason not to. It is the 4th of June, 1944, and you are standing in the rain watching the Channel try to take your beach apart. The wind came up in the night out of the west, and it has not let go since. The water down there is not water anymore. It is a grey field with white torn across it, and the noise it makes at the base of the cliff is not the noise you have gotten used to. It is heavier. It arrives in shoves. You cannot work the low tide. Nobody can. The sea is running right over the obstacle line, and 2 of the hedgehogs have shifted in the sand, which means when this passes, you will be down there in the wet, with a work party and a length of chain, doing again what you already did in April. Spray comes partway up the cliff face. That has never happened before. Even the gulls have gone inland. You have been on this coast 11 weeks now, and here is what everybody around you concludes from that weather, from the general on down. Nobody is coming. Not in this. You cannot put a small boat full of men onto an open beach through a sea like that. You cannot drop parachutes into that wind and expect them to land anywhere near each other. It is not caution, it is arithmetic. Every officer on this coast does the same sum that week and gets the same answer. And the answer is wrong, but the arithmetic is not. Here is the piece you are missing, and it is not your fault, because it is physically not available to you. The weather over the Channel arrives from the Atlantic. To know what is coming, you need to be reading the air out over the open ocean, days west of here. The Allies have that. They have weather ships out in the Atlantic and stations up in Iceland and Greenland, and men whose entire job is to look at all of it together. Germany used to have posts out there too. Germany does not anymore. So the storm you are standing in is, for you, simply the weather. You cannot see behind it. You cannot see the thin gap in it that a British forecaster is arguing about right now in a room in England. A gap of perhaps 36 hours, barely enough. And the argument he is having is about whether to risk everything on it. You just see rain. And the effect of that rain on your coastline over the next 2 days is that everybody relaxes. Not carelessly, sensibly, the way you would. The alert eases. Leave that had been held up gets approved. Officers who have not been home in months get on trains. There is a map exercise being arranged inland, down at Rennes, and a good number of the men who command things around here are expected to attend it. The Field Marshal himself, Rommel, gets into a car on the 4th and drives for Germany, because it is his wife's birthday on the 6th, and because there is obviously nothing about to happen. So it is a quiet couple of days on your cliff, and quietly, they are the best 2 days you have had since March. Because when the sea is impossible, nobody expects anything of you. The men play cards on an ammunition crate with a ground sheet over it. Baker takes the stove apart in the corner of the bunker and puts it back together, and now it draws properly. And the bunker is warm for the first time since it was poured. Warm enough that the water on the walls actually dries in one place, a patch about the size of a dinner plate, and men keep putting their hands on it. Sauer writes down the wind speed 4 times a day. He has begun writing down what the wind speed was on the same date last month for comparison, which nobody asked for. Ludwig gets a full night of sleep and looks about 15. Harras loathes the wind. It comes off the water and goes straight up the cliff face and over the top, and it does something to his ears that he cannot forgive, so he stays under the chart table for 2 days with his nose on his paws, coming out only when there is food. Somebody says the dog is the only one here with any sense. On the evening of the 5th, the rain slacks off a little. Not the wind, the rain. You stand at the slit for a while before you turn in. The light goes at about 10:30 this far north in June, and the last of it is behind you, over France. So the water in front of you goes dark first. That is how it always happens here. The sea gets dark before the land does. There is nothing on it. You go to bed at 11, early, in your boots, with the rain going on 6 feet of reinforced concrete over your head. It is one of the better sounds in the world, that. Rain on something that is not going to let it through. It is 11:15 on the night of the 5th of June, 1944, and you are asleep with your boots on when the sky starts. You hear it before you are awake. Everybody does. It comes into the sleep first and turns it into something else, and then you are on your feet in the dark with your hand already on your coat, and you do not remember deciding to stand up. Aircraft. Engines. Not one, not a dozen. You have heard bombers cross this coast 100 times. They come over high, going inland, a few dozen at a time, and after a while you stop getting up for it. This is not that. This does not pass over and go away. It keeps arriving. It comes in layers, one behind another, and it spreads out east and west along the whole coast until the noise is not coming from a direction anymore. It is just the condition of the air. Ludwig has the receiver against his ear before you reach him. His 2 fingers are going on his thigh, fast. "Regiment, sir," he says. "Aircraft. Very many." You take it. The voice on the other end is a man you have spoken to maybe 200 times, and tonight there is something wrong with it. A tightness, like he is speaking with his shoulders up. He asks you what you can see. You tell him you cannot see anything, which is true. It is dark, there is cloud, and everything is happening above the cloud. He tells you to alert your batteries and stay on the line. Then the line goes quiet in the way it does when the other man has put the receiver down on the table and walked away to ask somebody something. You get everyone up. That takes 4 minutes. The crews go out along the trench to the guns with their coats half on, and the guns come around onto their bearings, and the ready ammunition comes up out of the pits, and the whole position does, in the dark, what you have made it do in the dark 11 times since March. Then somebody on the northwest side shouts. You go out and look, and the cloud has broken over that way, and there are parachutes. Not near you, inland and to the west, a long way off, in that pale patch of sky between 2 banks of cloud. They come out of it in clusters. Something dark drops, and then a canopy opens, and the opening is not like a flower, whatever anyone tells you afterward. It is like a bag turning inside out, and there are enough of them that you stop being able to count within about 4 seconds, and then more, in a second place, and then a third. You have been given 4 batteries and told to hold a piece of coast, and what is happening behind your coast. You will remember this part very clearly for the rest of your life, and it is not the parachutes. It is the arithmetic of it. Your guns can reach inland. Of course they can. That is what guns do. You could bring them around right now, in 8 minutes, and put fire into those drop zones while those men are still coming down, and still spread out, and still looking for each other in the dark, which is the only moment when paratroopers are truly helpless. And you cannot. Your orders have exactly 1 line in them. The beach. Always the beach. You are the coastal artillery. Every gun on this coast is registered on the water in front of it, and none of them will be turned around on the authority of a major. And the men who could give that authority are in a car on a road to Germany, or on a train, or asleep in Le Mans, or arriving in Rennes for a map exercise. So, you stand on top of a cliff in the wind and watch, and you do the only thing available, which is to telephone the man above you and tell him what you are seeing, and wait. He says he will pass it on. By midnight, the paratroopers are down and are somewhere in the hedgerows behind you, moving, cutting things. You do not know that yet. What you know is that the sky has gone quiet again, and nobody will tell you anything, and that your guns are still pointed at an empty ocean. You go back into the bunker. You wipe the lenses of the binoculars, which do not need it. Harris is up now, standing, unhappy, pressed against the chart table leg. And here is where you spend the rest of that night, sitting on the floor with your back against the wall, coat on, boots on, 6 feet of concrete over your head and water beading on it, listening for a telephone. Think about your ceiling for a second. Tonight, right above you. There is nothing coming down through it. Nothing came down out of your sky tonight, and nothing will. And if it rains, the rain will stay outside. And the only thing that will come through that roof between now and morning is the light, in about 7 hours, gently, whether you are ready for it or not. That is a roof. Werner had one too that night. 6 feet of it. It did not help at all, because the trouble was not coming from above. It is 1:10 in the morning on the 6th of June, 1944, and you are waiting for a telephone to ring. It does not. This is the strangest 4 hours of your life, and almost nothing happens in it. That is what makes it strange. At 1 o'clock you are still on the line to regiment. At 10 past, the line goes dead. Not broken, exactly. Just nobody at the other end of it. Ludwig works it patiently, taps the cradle, tries the alternate circuit, listens with his eyes closed, and finally says, quietly, that he thinks the fault is not here. So you sit in a concrete room on a cliff with 4 batteries of howitzers, several hundred men, and no information at all. You try to build a picture out of what you have, because that is your job. Aircraft, many, in layers, along the whole coast. Parachutes inland to the west. In 3 places you could see, and probably more you could not. And now silence from behind you, which means either that nothing is happening back there, or that the men who would tell you are busy with something they consider more urgent than you. One of those is much more likely than the other. You go outside twice. Both times you hear the same thing, and both times you dislike it more. Thumping, far inland, dull, irregular. Not artillery in a pattern, just events happening in the dark to somebody, in the direction of everything you would need in order to be helped. And in front of you, the water, which is doing nothing. At 2 o'clock, you send a runner along to the batteries to make sure the crews are not standing out in the wind for no reason. At 3, you send another one because the first one has not come back, and then the first one comes back, and it turns out he simply stayed to help move ammunition, which is the sort of thing that happens, and you are more relieved about that than the situation warrants. At 3:30, Baker makes coffee on his repaired stove. Real coffee, or what passes for it, and there is enough for everybody in the bunker if you take it 2 inches deep in the cup. Nobody says anything much. It is the middle of the night, and everyone has been up since 11, and the cold in that room is the particular cold of wet concrete, which does not come at you from the air, it comes up through the soles of your boots and settles in your knees. Ludwig taps his rhythm on his thigh. Slower now. He has been doing it for 4 hours, and he does not know he is doing it. Sauer writes. Times, mostly. Line dead, 1:10. Runner out, 200. Runner returned, 3:15. Coffee, 3:30. He is documenting a night in which nothing is occurring, in a notebook, in pencil, and later that notebook will be in a field somewhere, and nobody will read it. At 4, you stand at the slit for 20 minutes and look at nothing. The wind has dropped a little. There is mist on the water, which happens here, and it sits low, a few feet thick, so the surface goes soft, and the horizon stops being a line and becomes a suggestion. You wipe the lenses. You have done this so many times tonight that Ludwig has started handing you the handkerchief. And then, some time before 5, you sit down on the floor and you sleep. 15 minutes, maybe 20. Sitting up, in a coat, in your boots, with the empty receiver on its hook and the dog coming over and lying down along your leg with his whole warm weight against your shin. That is the last time you sleep for a very long while, and it is the best thing that happens to you all night. Just an old dog deciding, of all the places available, on you. Now, listen to your room for a moment. There will be some silence in it. Maybe a hum from somewhere, a floorboard, the wind at a window. And here is the thing about that silence, the thing worth taking with you into sleep tonight. It is not information. It does not mean the line is cut. It does not mean someone has been overrun and cannot reach you. It does not have to be interpreted, and nobody is waiting for you to interpret it, and it is not going to be broken by a voice telling you something you cannot fix. That silence is just a quiet room. You are allowed to hear it as nothing at all. He could not. He sat in it for 4 hours and read it like a page, and everything he read in it was true, and none of it was any use to him. Dawn is at 5:30. It is 5:30 in the morning on the 6th of June, 1944, and you are standing on an ammunition box wiping a pair of lenses that are perfectly clean. You are doing it because your hands want something to do. You have been awake since 11:15 the night before, minus about 15 minutes on a concrete floor, and the inside of your head has that thin, scraped feeling where everything is very clear and none of it is reliable. The light is coming. Not sunrise. This far north in June, the light arrives long before the sun does, and it does not arrive from one place, it just gradually stops being night. The mist on the water is still there. It has thinned to about the height of a man. You put the binoculars up to the slit. Grey. Grey water and grey air, the two of them not really separate yet, and the horizon doing what it has done every single morning since March, which is to be a suggestion rather than a line. There is a smudge out there. You have seen 10,000 smudges. You know smudges. A smudge is weather, or a fishing boat, or a smear on the glass, and 11 weeks of standing at this slit have made you an expert in being wrong about them. So you take the glasses down and you wipe them again, properly this time, and you put them back up. The smudge has edges. You hold on it. The mist moves the way mist does, thinning and closing, and each time it opens, the edges are still there, and there are more of them than the time before. And then it lifts, properly, the way a curtain goes up rather than the way fog burns off, and you see what is in front of your beach. So you count. Of course you count. You are an artillery officer, and counting is what you have instead of feelings. You start on the left of your sector, at the western limit where you can still see, and you count the big ones first, because the big ones are what matters. You get to 11. Then you notice that the 11 are all in the near line, and there is another line behind them, and behind that one another, going back into the haze until the haze stops you. So you start again, and you count what is closest, in one narrow slice of water, one arm's width of horizon, and in that slice you reach 28. And then you take the glasses down and look at the whole width of your sector with your naked eyes, and the counting comes apart in your hands. There is no number. That is not a figure of speech, and it is not fear. It is a technical failure. Counting requires that the things be separable, and out there past your obstacle line, filling every part of the water you are responsible for, and continuing past both edges of what you can see, they have stopped being separable. Warships, big ones, sitting broadside on, transports behind them, and between and around and underneath all of it, hundreds of low, small shapes, and more coming out from behind the transports in rows. Somebody in the bunker asks what it is. It is Ludwig. He asks it twice. You tell him to get you regiment. And here is the thing you will still be able to feel in your fingers when you are 70 years old, sitting somewhere quiet with a cup of coffee, telling this to a man with a notebook. It is not the ships. It is your hand not working properly on the way to the telephone. Your hand goes out for the receiver, and it is unsteady, and you watch it being unsteady from somewhere slightly outside yourself, and you have time to be annoyed about it. The line is back. Of course it is back now. You report what is in front of you. You give the bearing and you describe the formation, and then you have to give a number, because that is what a report is, and there is no number, so you say the largest number you are prepared to say out loud, which is thousands. Thousands of ships. And the man on the other end tells you to get hold of yourself. He is not being cruel. Put yourself on his end of the wire for 1 second. He is at a desk. It is 5:30 in the morning. He has spent all night handling reports of parachutes from men who could not agree on where or how many, and now a battalion commander who has been awake for 19 hours is telling him there are thousands of ships off Normandy, when everybody at every level above him has spent 2 years being certain the blow falls at Calais, and when the sea state 2 days ago made a landing arithmetically impossible. So he says the sensible thing. He says nobody has that many ships. Then he asks which way they are heading. And you look through the slit at the whole grey horizon full of iron, and you say the shortest true sentence available to you. Straight at me. There is a pause on the line. In that pause, a large amount of the war changes hands, and neither of you says anything about it. Then he tells you to hold, and he is gone. And the receiver is warm in your hand, and Harris is standing up now, not under the table, out from under it, tail low, looking at the doorway rather than at you. Dogs know a change of air before we do. And now, a moment, before what happens next happens. Think about who is depending on you tonight. Right now, in the dark, in your bed. Nobody. Nobody is on a line waiting for a number from you. There is no decision sitting on your chest that another man's life comes off. If you are wrong about something tonight, you will be wrong in your sleep, and it will cost nothing, and no one will find out. Tomorrow, you will make small choices about ordinary things, and the worst of them will be a mild inconvenience. That is not nothing. That is one of the largest gifts a person can be given, and it is invisible, because you have it every single night. He had 4 batteries, several hundred men, 1 telephone, and a horizon he could not count. You have a blanket and no responsibilities until morning. It is 10 minutes to 6 in the morning on the 6th of June, 1944, and you are watching the ocean light up. It comes as flashes first, along the near line of warships, silent for a moment because sound is slow and light is not. A ripple of them, left to right, and then a second ripple before the first sound reaches you. Then the sound reaches you. The men afterward will all reach for the same comparison, and it is the right one, so it survives. It is trains. It is heavy freight going by very close, one after another, overhead, and it does not stop between them. You have been under artillery before. That was artillery. This is a different category of event. This is the whole sea deciding something about the piece of land you are standing on. The first ones go over you and into the ground behind. You feel those through your boots before your ears report them. The second lot are closer. And then your cliff is hit properly, and here is what 6 feet of reinforced concrete does. It holds. It absolutely holds. and it transmits every bit of the shock straight through itself into you. So the floor jumps, and the chart comes off the table, and the shelf empties, and the whole room goes white. Not with light, with dust. Concrete dust, shaken out of the ceiling in a solid fall, and chalk dust behind it. And in about 4 seconds, every man in that bunker is coated. In the hair, in the eyes, in the corners of the mouth. So somebody down at the far end says the old joke, coughing, because it is the only thing anybody can think of, that we all look like Baker again. Nobody laughs, but somebody says it. And it is the last time that joke gets said on that cliff. You get the glasses back up to the slit because you have to see, and this is the moment your war ends as a technical profession. A shell comes in near enough to shove the entire hillside, and there is a crack you feel in your teeth, and when you look again, there is a line through the field of view. The optics are gone, not shattered, not blown out of your hands, simply and permanently divided, so that the sea on the left of the crack does not line up with the sea on the right of it. You are an artillery officer. Your whole value is the ability to see accurately and turn what you see into numbers a gun crew can use. That has just been taken away from you by a fracture the width of a hair. There is a new crack in the wall by the slit, too, a real one, going up and away out of sight, and thin smoke is coming through it from somewhere outside, and the smoke smells of burnt earth rather than anything you own. You send Sauer along the trench to the batteries because you cannot rely on the wire, and he goes, notebook in his tunic, at a crouching run, and the last thing you see of him is his boots. And then you look down, and there is a gap by your leg where a dog has been for 4 hours. The steel door is open. It was open because men have been going in and out of it all night, and it stays open in your memory forever, and you will always know exactly whose door it was. You call him. You are a major in the German army, standing in a bunker under naval gunfire, with your instrument destroyed and your telephone unreliable, and you go down onto one knee, and you call an old dog by name, twice, into a noise so large that a human voice inside it is a joke. He does not come. Ludwig starts to get up, to go out and look, and you put your hand flat on his shoulder, and you push him back down onto the floor, hard, and you keep your hand there. That is the correct decision. You know it is the correct decision. It is also the first thing you have done this morning that will actually stay with you, and it will still be with you when you are an old man in a chair in Germany, and it is not the ships. So the two of you lie flat on a concrete floor in the white dust, with your arms over your heads, while the sea works on the hill above you. And between the freight trains, when there is a gap, you call the dog again. It is 6:30 in the morning on the 6th of June, 1944, and you are giving fire orders through a hole in the wall. The naval guns have lifted off you and moved inland. That is not mercy, it is a schedule. It means the next thing is coming. The next thing is coming. You cannot use the optics, so you use the slit and your own eyes, and you use the range card, which is the one piece of professional work you did in April that nobody can take away. Every feature on that beach was measured and written down months ago. The rock, the end of the seawall, the mouth of each of the drawers. You know the distance to all of them the way you know your own address. So when the low shapes cross the line between the outer marker and the obstacle belt, you do not need to see them clearly. You only need to know they are between two numbers you already have. You open at 2,000 yards. And here is the part I want to be honest with you about, because it matters. You are not looking at people. Not through that slit, and not at that distance, and not with your glasses broken. You are looking at rectangles on grey water. That is what artillery is. Artillery is arithmetic performed on coordinates, at ranges where a human being is smaller than the smallest mark on your instrument, and the men who work the guns 200 yards behind you cannot see the water at all. That is a technical truth. It is also the only shelter available in that bunker, and every man in there is standing in it. The guns fire. You correct. They fire again. One of the shapes stops being a shape. There is a flat crack out there and a lift of water, and then there is nothing where a rectangle was, and a cheer starts somewhere down the trench and dies almost immediately, because behind that one there are 10 more, and behind those 20. They keep coming through the gap, and they do not slow down, and they do not turn away, and nothing about their behaviour suggests they think this is going badly for them. For every one you stop, the sea sends the next. And this is where the arithmetic turns around on you. You have 4 batteries. Ammunition is stacked in the pits, and it looks like a great deal until you begin spending it at the rate this requires. Zauer comes back at 6:45, out of breath, with actual figures, and the figures are the first genuinely frightening thing to happen all morning. Not the ships. The consumption rate. You do that sum in your head while you are speaking to him, and you do not say the answer out loud. The ramps go down. You know that from the change in the shapes and from the machine guns starting up in the bluffs below and to your right, and those you can hear as individual weapons, which means the fight has arrived at a distance where individual weapons matter. And then the naval fire comes back, but it is different now. Before it was a schedule, laid on a map in advance. Now it is answering. Somebody out there is watching where your rounds come from and telling a ship, and the corrections arrive within a minute or two, and they get closer each time. One of your positions to the east stops responding. Not destroyed, you think, just not answering. At about 7:10, a splinter comes through the observation slit. Just one. It comes in on the diagonal, off the frame, and it takes Sauer across the shoulder and neck and puts him down on the floor without any noise at all. Which is the thing nobody tells you about it. He is on his back with his eyes open and his hand going up to find out what has happened to him. It is not fatal. You know that within about 10 seconds, once the tunic is open, and it is a piece of good luck so narrow that there is no point examining it. Ludwig gets a dressing on it. His hands are extremely steady because they are watchmaker's hands, and this is the first thing he has been able to do all morning that has an outcome. Sauer says quite clearly that he needs his notebook. It is in the tunic. Ludwig gets it and puts it in his other hand, and he holds it against his chest and lies still. And you go back to the slit, and you give another correction, because that is your job. By 7:30, the guns are still firing, and the men are working, and nothing has yet gone wrong in a way that cannot be repaired. And you sit down on a shell case for one moment, 20 seconds perhaps, and look at your hands. They are shaking. They have been shaking for 2 hours. Nobody has noticed because everybody's are. Now, there is very likely a person somewhere near you tonight, in the same room or one room over. Listen for a second. They are breathing quietly. Nothing is being asked of them either. Nobody is going to come and put a dressing on anyone in your house tonight. And if you say something out loud right now, the person who answers will be irritated at most. That is what a safe house sounds like. It sounds like almost nothing. He had a boy of 19 holding a lieutenant's shoulder together on a concrete floor, and he could not hear either of them. It is 20 to 8 in the morning on the 6th of June, 1944, and you are doing arithmetic you already know the answer to. A runner comes in from the second battery with a figure, then a man from the third. You put them together with what Sauer brought you at 6:45, and you work out how long you can keep firing at the rate this fight demands. 30 minutes. Perhaps a little more if you slow down, and you cannot slow down, because slowing down is the same as stopping, and stopping is the same as letting them walk up the beach. That is the whole war right there, in one small sum done in pencil on the back of a range card. Not defeat, just a number running out. You ask about resupply. You know the answer before the man opens his mouth, because you have known it since the middle of May without permitting yourself to look at it directly. The roads behind you were bombed for 4 weeks. The bridges over the Seine are down. The rail yards are down. Whatever ammunition exists for these guns exists somewhere on the other side of all that. There is no more. There was never going to be any more. So you spend what you have properly, which is the last piece of professional work available to you. No general fire, only observed targets. Only when something is between 2 numbers you already know. At about 8 o'clock, the shapes stop being on the water. That means men are on the shingle, and then in the drawers, in the little gullies you mined in April and mapped in Sauer's handwriting, climbing up through your own minefields toward the top. You cannot fire on the drawers. They are too close, and your guns are laid on the water, and the men in them are your own as well as theirs. The radio goes at 8:10, not with any drama. It simply stops being a radio. Ludwig works on it for 4 minutes with his watchmaker's hands, and then sits back and says nothing, which from him is a full report. So now you have no optics, no telephone forward, no radio, and a piece of paper telling you how many rounds are left. A man arrives from regiment on foot, which tells you everything about the state of things behind you. He is somebody you have never seen before, and he is grey with dust to the waist. You ask him about withdrawal. He says there is no withdrawal. Not refused. There simply is not one. The roads are cut and the traffic is being shot up from the air, and the order everyone has all the way up is the same order you have had since March. The beach. Always the beach. You hold this position. That is all. Nobody has been dishonest with you. Nobody has been cruel. The instruction is simply what it always was, and you built this place well, and it has exactly one door. At about 8:30, Baker dies. It happens at gun number 2, and it is nothing like anything. He has been carrying rounds up out of the pit for 2 hours, 41 years old, a plumber from Hamburg, and a ship out there gets its correction right. There is one bad minute along that gun line. When it is over, the crew are moving again, and someone is calling for hands, and Emil Baker is sitting against the revetment with his back straight and his legs out in front of him, looking down the line of the gun. Nothing about him is wrong to look at. That is the part you will not be able to explain to anybody afterward. The boy next to him keeps talking to him for a while. That is the ordinary thing. It takes a while for a young man to accept that the answer is not coming. There is bread in his tunic pocket. There is always bread in that pocket, a piece of it, saved, the way he ate everything, slowly, making it last much longer than it needed to. The dog would have had it in about 4 seconds. Neither of them is here now. You get up and you go back to the guns, because there are still 11 or 12 rounds a battery, and it is your job to spend them well. And at 9:15, the last 2 guns stop. Not destroyed, not overrun, not silenced by anything the enemy did to them. The crews are alive, the guns are serviceable, the range card is on the box, and the pits are empty. Nothing left to put in the breach. The last man to fire does the whole drill correctly, and then stands there with his hands loose because the drill has nowhere to go. And then the noise stops on your hill. After 3 hours of it, that silence arrives like a physical object. Everybody is deaf, so it is not really quiet. It rings. Under the ringing you can hear the sea, still coming in and going out at the bottom of the cliff, doing exactly what it was doing in March, entirely uninterested. And you can hear machine guns down in the bluffs that are not yours, and men shouting a long way off in a language you learned a little of in school. You stand in the doorway of a bunker built to last 1,000 years, and it is not yet 9 in the morning. It is 1 in the afternoon on the 6th of June, 1944, and you are walking down a hill you have climbed 11 minutes at a time since March. Downhill it takes less. That is the joke of it. All that work getting up, and the leaving is quick. There are perhaps a dozen of you. Ludwig is not among them, and you will not know for 2 days what happened to him. And what happened to him is that he was taken alive at 10 in the morning, near the guns with his hands on top of his head, and he came out of the war and went home to Bamberg and opened his father's shop again. But at 1 in the afternoon on the 6th of June, you do not know that, and the not knowing is the heaviest thing you are carrying. Before you left, you went back into the observation post one last time. The chart was on the floor. The shelf was empty. There was a fracture in the wall by the slit going up and out of sight, and dust an inch deep on everything. And pinned inside the entrance where a 19-year-old put it in May, there was a child's drawing of a clock shop. All of the clocks in the window showing a different time. You took it down and put it in your breast pocket, behind the tide table. That is not a sensible thing for a major to do in a collapsing sector. You did it anyway. There is an aid post in a farm building half a mile inland, in what used to be the cow byre. This is where the morning ends up. Men on the stone floor, on straw, on doors taken off their hinges. 2 orderlies and a doctor who has been operating since 7 and is working in his shirt sleeves. And here is the thing about that room, and it is in every honest account of that day. There are Americans on that floor too. Brought up from the beach, laid down in the same straw as your own men, in a row, and nobody is making distinctions, because a doctor with more work than hands does not have the luxury of nationality. 2 men who spent the morning trying to kill each other are lying 18 inches apart, being given the same water by the same tired orderly. You put Sauer down at the end of that row. You carried him half a mile with another man, and he complained the entire way, which is a very good sign. And then you make the only real decision left to you as an officer, which is that he stays. Not because you are abandoning him, because there are no roads, because a man with a hole in his shoulder on a cut road under aircraft is a dead man, and a man on straw in a byre that the Americans will reach by evening is a man who gets a doctor. You hand him his notebook. He puts it on his chest, under his hand, the way he did in the bunker. Outside, in the yard, you see them close up for the first time all day. 3 of them, sitting on the bank by the gate, walking wounded, waiting to be sorted out. Ordinary. Younger than you expected. One of them is perhaps 20, and has been crying and has stopped, and his boots are full of sand, and the sand is dried grey on the leather. An orderly gives him a cigarette and lights it for him, because his hands are not working, and he says something, and the orderly does not understand a word of it, and nods anyway. And you stand there in the doorway of a French cow byre, and you look at that boy having his cigarette lit for him, and there is nothing left in you to hate with. That is all. Nothing happens. Nobody says anything to anybody. It is just a young man having his hands shake in front of you, exactly the way yours were shaking at 7:30. Then you turn inland and walk, because that is the order, and because there is a war left to go on losing, and it will take another 11 months to lose it, and you will still be alive at the end. And tomorrow morning, wherever you are, someone will wake you. But not you. Not tonight. Tonight, nobody is going to wake you. No telephone at 2:10, no hand on your shoulder in the dark, no voice saying aircraft to the northwest, no boots to put on because you are already wearing them. Tomorrow you will surface slowly, on your own, in your own time, in a bed, in a house with a door on it, and the first thing you have to do will be nothing at all. That is the whole gift. Waking up because you are finished sleeping. Werner Pluskat did not have a morning like that for 11 more months. It is a long time later, and there is one more thing to say, and then I will let you go. Here is what was left when the arithmetic finished. The division that did not exist 5 months earlier, the 352nd, lost more than 1,200 men killed, wounded, or missing in the first 12 hours of that day. And of every place the Allies came ashore that morning, this stretch of sand was the one where the German defence worked best. This was the good day. This was the Atlantic Wall doing everything it had been built to do. It held for a morning. And then it ran out of shells. Werner Pluskat came through it. He fought through the summer, through the closing of the pocket and the long walk back across France. And he gave himself up to the Americans in the spring of 1945, and he went home. And many years afterward, a writer named Cornelius Ryan sat down with him, and that is how we have any of this at all. Without an old man being willing to talk, we have a bunker and a date scratched in the concrete, and nothing else. And this is the part that gave tonight its title, so I will say it once and plainly. He said, and he went on saying it until he died, that the moment he understood the war was finished was not a battle, and not a defeat, and not a surrender. It was the moment the mist lifted at 5:30 in the morning, and he saw how many ships there were. He said he knew, right then, standing at a slit in 6 feet of concrete, with clean lenses in his hands. He may be right. He may have built that afterward, the way we all tidy up our own worst mornings into something with a shape. Nobody can go back and check what a man understood at 5:30. But something in it rings true, and it is not about ships. It is about a man whose entire profession was counting, standing in front of something that could not be counted. The bunkers are still up there. You can walk to them. The concrete has cracked, and the slit looks out over a beach with people on it in summer, and the date some proud soldier scratched by the entrance in April of 1944 is still readable if you know where to look. They said it would last 1,000 years. It was in use for about 4 hours. And the last thing, the thing worth taking with you. He did everything correctly. Every single thing. He built well. He registered his guns. He measured every feature of that beach. He spent his last rounds on observed targets. He carried a wounded man 1/2 mile and then left him where the doctors were. And none of it made the slightest difference to how the day came out, because the day was decided by weather stations in the Atlantic and bridges over the Seine and factories a long way away. So what did he keep? One thing. He kept the way he behaved toward the people beside him. He pushed a 19-year-old back down onto the floor instead of letting him go out that door. He put a lieutenant where the doctors were. He took a child's drawing off a wall. That is what is left over. That is always what is left over. And none of it is your job tonight. Nothing is being counted. No line is waiting for a number. Your ceiling is holding, and your feet are dry, and the person nearest you is breathing quietly, and the silence in your room is not information about anything. So let it be silence. The tide is going out somewhere. It always is. You have nowhere to be. Let your jaw go loose. Breathe out. Sleep now. S. Good night.